Karibu sana. Today, Baba Jahi and I are doing a video that we have been talking about for years.
Yeah.
For a very long time. And it is something that we've taken a lot of time and patience in approaching because of the importance and the severity and just the reality, right? And so the title of the video is Holy Hypocrisy from Western Christianity to New Age, right? And we have a lot of disclaimers that we want to get out, and one of those first ones, I want it to be known that it's really important that you don't put people in these labels, right? Labels that are given to you by the oppressor are going to they're going to pan out bad, right? So we can't put ourselves in this. Are you a Christian? Are you New Age, right? And are you Democrat? Are you Republican? It's like these options are not real options. And essentially, we want to highlight in this video how much more similar Christianity and New Age are, and how those similarities are telling us a story about American life, American reality, and how it's a detriment to us as Black African people.
Right. So in these disclaimers, we're trying to show the areas of overlap between these two seemingly competing systems of thought.
Seemingly.
We're showing how they're actually birthed out of the same culture, the same culture of Americanism, consumerism, you name it, whatever the ideology is of our oppressors, they are always dictating how we engage with these systems of thought. So what's important for us is what is the environment that we're living in when we develop these ways of thinking, and more importantly, how is that translating into practical benefit for us?
Yes.
I mean, are we making the sacrifices? Are we making the concrete changes in our living standards so that our children can benefit from it? Because if we're not doing that, then we're wasting our time. So the first disclaimer that we want to touch on is that the supreme sin, according to Yeshua ben Yosef, and when I say Yeshua ben Yosef, I just means what Christians call Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
The supreme sin, according to Yeshua ben Yosef, was not the, quote, beliefs of the people, but their hypocrisy, or the attempt to buy salvation. So this is just a reference to the famous story in the Bible where Yeshua storms the temple and overturns the tables of the money changers and says, you've turned a house of prayer into a den of thieves. And then also importantly, that was the point in time when the priesthood at that time decided that Yeshua needed to be killed.
Right.
That
was the nail in the coffin.
That's the nail in the coffin for Yeshua. So from that one biblical incident, what we're highlighting is that when we're talking about religion, or we're talking about spirituality, I should say, we're talking about how are you going against the grain? What are you doing to upset the status quo? And if you're not upsetting the status quo, then whatever belief system you're claiming to belong to, whatever belief system you're claiming to advocate for, is not really amounting to much. Because the whole point of spiritual practice is to change reality, to change who the oppressor is, to run the oppressor out of power. And again, so when we're talking about Christianity, we're measuring it up against that standard. The standard of what are Christians doing today in order to upset the status quo. And likewise, what are New Age people doing to upset the status quo? We're not showing any favoritism because both these New Age and Christian systems, they come out of that same imperial American culture.
Right.
So the second disclaimer is that Yeshua was the enemy of false prophets primarily, who misuse and abuse ritual for private gain. So that's another disclaimer. We're just giving you the context. This is again about culture, and we're looking at the religion and the New Age as aspects that exist within a broader culture of imperialism. Next is religion is a genetically recessive trait of white societies. It is their attempt to create a system where the relationship with God or a higher power can be maintained without bringing harm upon themselves. So traditionally as Africans, we had what was called spirituality, which means we knew how to make connections with nature. We knew how to make connections with each other that transcended the kind of narrow confines of religion. But with religion, what you had, especially under the oppressive influence of Rome, what you had was this kind of military imposition of order that was in conflict with our natural ways of living. So, and we're going to speak on that as well, how a lot of these religious practices and customs that Western Christian society has engaged in, these come from a legacy of militarism, a legacy of oppression.
Right.
Also in this video, we'll be addressing the Western traditions of Christianity in the New Age and not Christians in general, because we understand that it is the cultural climate that shapes religious practice and not the reverse.
This is why we said Western Christianity and not just Christianity in general, because we know Christians here, and the Christians here that we know act nothing like the Christians in the West, right? They actually abide by the principles. They actually sacrifice. They actually are in communion with God, right? Even though they may be using a religion that we may feel that isn't ideal, because the culture here is a certain way, they're able to have that access. And what we're saying is, as Christians who live in America, who live in the West, you are not practicing Christianity. You're practicing something else, and this desire and this very evangelistic energy and this need to prophesy and all of these things are a militaristic approach. And really, we're more so condemning the people, right? Yes. It's the issue with the people are the issue. It's not really the religion at this point, because the Christians already know. Christians have, if you tell a Christian Christianity was given to you through slavery, it was forced upon you, they know that and they don't care, right? That doesn't matter to them. They understand that and they will agree with that, and they'll try to justify it. But now at this point, it's the people that are the problem. It's the hypocrisy in the Christian. It's the hypocrisy in the New Age person who is trying to access something that the nation, the culture of that nation has already told you you're not allowed to access. And this is why there's so much turmoil. It's because spirituality is not attainable under oppression, under oppressive regimes. Spirituality is not attainable. And so in this video, we're going to be highlighting that reality.
Yes, because I like to note that Nat Turner was a Christian. And I don't oppose Nat Turner, and he actually used the Bible as the basis for his rebellion.
Absolutely.
So when we're talking about Christian, again, we're talking about what is the container in which it's housed. What is the energy, the background, the psychology that they're bringing to the table. And is that psychology one of compliance with white power, or is it one of resistance? Okay, and we're arguing that in American context, Christianity is about full-scale compliance with white power, and New Age is full-scale compliance with white domination.
Absolutely.
So next, this will be a lengthy video because great care was put into its development, and the depth of ideas require more patience than most topics. So if you're a person who wants just like a quick 15-minute kind of summation, this is not that type of video.
You don't got no 15 minutes.
We don't have, because we want to make sure that we don't leave any stone unturned, and that we pour out all of the information and insights that we've gathered in preparation for this video. And lastly, unlike most of our videos, this will not be advising listeners on how to avert disaster, but it's more of a description of how American society got to where it is today.
Right.
So I know this is very topical given the upcoming eclipse tomorrow, and it's a lot of commentary specifically from Christians about the end of days and how this is prophecy and all these catastrophic things that are set to happen. And what we're saying is that when it comes to prophecy, your understanding of that is reflected in how you move before the eclipse happens. Okay, so essentially we're saying if you're still in America now, it's too late. And what we're doing is we're just saying this is kind of our kind of estimation of what may happen, or what we see, what we expect to happen to people in North America at this point in time, given the level of spiritual illness and decrepitness and disease that is reigning in that society.
Right.
All right. So this is not we're rescuing. It's just like this is just a report. All right. So now we're going to jump into the heart of the video. So we have about 7 points, and I'm just going to number them out as I stated. So our first point is that both Christianity, and I want to repeat that, both Christianity and New Age. All right. So this is addressing both systems. Both Christianity and New Age are in bondage to American culture, and it is a culture of destruction that guides their morality and decision making. All right, you want to elaborate on that?
So this is kind of what I was talking about earlier, in the sense of how Christianity is worshiping American culture. Like, that's just what it is. Like, you can find plenty pastors that will openly say that they love America. You can see the patriotism in Christianity. Like, there's this pride that comes with it, and that you see the same thing with New Age. They both further and they both allow American culture to sustain itself, because America is a Christian nation, right? They call themselves a Christian nation. They got God on their money. They got God in their Pledge of Allegiance. They are openly a Christian nation, yet they're also the most destructive. And they've also produced things like New Age, because that was birthed out of this need to access some spirituality that white people, white nations can't access. Let's talk about the history of what New Age is.
So New Age, depending on where you start your timeline, it began as a response to the decay, the deterioration of the church within European society. So I would say maybe the earliest kind of glimmers of the New Age began during what was called the Age of Reason. Okay, so this was like in the 18th century, 19th century, where you had different European philosophers, and they was part of what was called the Age of Reason, or the Age of Enlightenment. Or you think about like the French Revolution. This is about displacing the Pope, getting rid of any form of clergy or, power that came from the Catholic Church, and putting in its place industry, capitalism. This is famously when the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche said, "God is dead." You see, and we killed him. That was the next part. He said, "God is dead, and we killed him." So what you had was this secular society being birthed within Europe, and at the same time, ironically, while this secular society was growing in Europe, they was poisoning Africa with Christianity. So at the same time, you had missionaries, Lutherans and Dutch missionaries coming to Africa and poisoning African people with this promise of heaven in the hereafter, while denying us heaven on earth. In Europe, they was continuously wearing down at any type of religious institutions that they had.
Because white people are secular by nature.
Yeah, they're secular by nature.
So they only become non-secular when they enter the presence of African people or black people or indigenous people or God's children. That's when they start talking about religion and all of these laws and rules. But when they're by themselves in the ice and in the caves and in Europe without black and African people, they are secular naturally.
Yes. So that was, I would say, that was the first stage in New Age. When you got the Age of Reason, which I said maybe like the 1700s, and this lasted all the way until about like the 1960s. And this was, I guess you can call it the second wave of New Age. And the second wave of New Age, this was a so-called hippie movement. This is when people was talking about integration,
Woodstock,
free love, summer of love, sexual liberation. You had feminism. You had homosexuality being normalized. You had heavy drug usage, streaking. All this was happening. Mooning people. All this was happening during a period in America specifically, and Dr. Francis Cress Welsing talks about this, where the image of American power was taking a big hit. So this is when Watergate happened. This was when Vietnam happened. And whenever a nation goes into crisis, what they have is what's called a return of the repressed. That means they go back to their savage origins. And the savage origins of white people was not religious. The savage origins of white people is secular. That means they were cannibals. They were pedophiles. They were rapists. They were murderers. So all of traffickers. So all of this, they had to create a system of thought that would be able to accommodate this shift in consciousness that was happening because of social things that was happening in America.
Because remember, every religion is about the social climate of where you are. So this is why we say you're not practicing Christianity. You're practicing American imperialism, patriotism. That's what you're practicing.
Another way of putting it is a religion is only as nutritious as the soil it is rooted in. The soil of America is poisonous, meaning every religion, every religious institution, every thought process that comes out of this poisonous soil is only going to further that poison. Meaning, if you want a religion that's pure, if you want a religion that's nutritious, if you want a thought system that's pure, if you want a thought system that's nutritious, you must be in an environment of nutritionally sound people, of thoughtful, wise people. You shouldn't be in an environment where mass shootings is the norm, where kidnapping is the norm, where trafficking is the norm. You know, these are
people
always,
like Diddy can walk the streets.
Where psychopaths like Diddy can walk freely in the open view of everyone.
But this is supposed to be a Christian
and nobody
nation.
wants to intervene to say this is the death of justice. This is the death of any type of morality.
No.
So what we're arguing here is that all people, New Age and Christians, they have been woefully inadequate. They have been hypocritical in their inability to openly and viciously condemn the evil that is America. And as long as they remain silent on those things, they have a bond of immorality that they share.
And God turns their back on them.
And God turns their back on them, and the ancestors turn their back on them.
There is no work, and this is why a lot of people, we'll talk about this a little bit further down, this is why we see so many people clinging towards Christianity right now, because they can feel that something is happening and that God is angry. And they feel like this is the only option. This is the only narrative that I know that gives me something to cling to. So let me get saved before the end.
So Christianity, let's talk about what the weakness is of Christianity and the weakness of New Age. So Christianity suffers, American Christianity.
Yes.
Let's be clear. Western Christianity in an imperialistic culture suffers from a crisis in leadership. Meaning this is the megachurch pastors. These are the T.D. Jakes. These are the Creflo Dollars. These are the people who have turned the church into a den of thieves, as Yeshua said in the Bible. Next, we have New Agers suffer from grandiose concepts of self. And both suffer from an inability to divorce themselves from an American culture. And in scholarship, this is called religious market consumerism. Meaning, in America, religions are governed in the same way corporations are governed.
It is a corporation.
It's not about accessing truth. It's not about wisdom. It's not about breeding resistance.
It's not about saving your soul.
Sacrifice. It's not about saving your soul. It's about numbers. How many people can we get in this auditorium? How many smoke machines can we get in this auditorium? How many strobe lights we can get in this auditorium?
How much spit can we wipe on your face?
How much spit can we wipe on someone's face?
In this auditorium.
In this Mike Todd, how much vomit we can spew, you know, to satisfy your appetite for filth. You know, that is what religion has become in America. So we have to say, when we're looking at how religions are governed, they aren't governed in the service of justice. They're governed to protect evil. They're governed to protect
society.
The imbalance. They're preserving the imbalance of society.
And you are preserving the imbalance of that society by claiming any of these religions, whether it's New Age, whether it's Christianity, whether it's Judaism. If you were in these spaces and if you were in these nations, it doesn't matter what religion you claim, it is furthering the imperialist nation of America.
No amount of breath work can save you in a nation that systematically takes the breath of African people every day.
It's a no. It's a no.
No amount of breath work can save you in a nation that's taking the breath of African people every day. No amount of meditation, no amount of manifestation, no amount of affirmations. You have to act. And the way you act is you call out your enemy. And
you are acting. You're always acting by where you choose to live.
Yes.
This is why in the Bible God talks about judging nations. Groups of cities, towns. It's never really individuals. It's never really individuals. It's a lot of nations and towns and cities. So this means we are looking at where you are. Where are you? And this is telling me more than what you tell me you believe.
Yes, because in Sodom and Gomorrah, I'm positive there were people there.
There were victims
who weren't engaged in sodomy.
Yeah.
In fact, in Sodom and Gomorrah, there's probably people there getting raped, but they died with the rapist.
Right. Because of where they were.
Because of where they were. So again, we're underlining the shared bond of residence between the New Age and the Christians shows that they're very okay. They're very content with being in the presence of psychopathic individuals.
At peace.
Psychopathic governments. Okay, governments that are murderous, that have been murderous for centuries. They're content with that. So we should take note of that.
Right, and now the people have become murderous. Mass shootings, people killing their children, people killing their cousins and all these things because the government, the society is telling them, affirming that this is the way of life.
Yes. So let's dive back into a scriptural evidence in Matthew 18:6. There's a scripture that condemns the mistreatment of children
right.
and the abuse of children. And it says, Jesus actually says, it's better to tie a millstone around your neck and drown yourself than to bring harm upon children.
And for me, that was really how I knew that America wasn't livable, because the way that children are mistreated, just so hated, just so despised. Like, there's this just undertone of just like contempt for children in America. And I could feel that. And as a mother, I was like, no matter what else is going on, this is not a place for me to raise children. And then when I realized that this was a scripture, I'm like, Jesus even, y'all, your Savior talks about how sacred children are and how he values children. Yet I see y'all talking about F them kids. I see you complaining when it's time to breastfeed. I see you talking about postpartum, like all of these diseases, all of these trafficking. America has 52% of the world's trafficking.
Human trafficking. 52%. But only 5% of the global population.
So that means, and these are not just adults, these are children being trafficked. And so the Creator, like we said, has turned his back. Their backs have been turned to people that can stomach being in societies where the most vulnerable people are subjected to the most heinous, neglectful, like children getting shot, children getting hit in the road, and people just keep going. Like, that could never happen in other parts of the world, and people could just go on about their lives. And so that was one of the signs for me that there's no way that God is here. There's no way. There is no way, because this isn't happening. If you can maybe argue it if it was happening in other parts of the world on the same scale, but it's not. It's specific to America.
And this is just another research that someone can do. Is there's an international convention called the International Convention on the Protection of the Child, and America is one of the only nations. I think it may be the only nation in the world that has not put its signature on that international convention. So why does America not want to sign an international convention that is mandating something that's uncontroversial, as children should be protected? Because they know that the torture of children is integral to its survival. And it's always been integral to their survival ever since slavery. Because if you look at the Ma'afa, the trafficking of Africans across the Atlantic, the vast majority of those crossing that so-called Middle Passage were children. You see? So what was in the birth is in the middle age, and it's going to be in the death. Meaning, this is the essence of American society, and the systematic abuse and torture of children.
And if you can't feel that, now your Christianity is called into question.
Yes,
because discernment is just not a thing anymore, I guess, in Christian reality and New Age reality. Those are just those things are irrelevant now, because if you can't feel this, there's a problem.
So now we're going to transition into our second point. All right, so our second major point. So our second major point is those who swing from Christianity to New Age and back again are doing so because of the unstable moral foundation of American society. It is this unstable moral foundation that bonds Christians to New Agers. Okay, so we see this most popularly in the screen, this kind of trend of testimonial videos of Christians who saying, I was once New Age and then I came back to Christianity, or Christians who say, I used to be Christian and then I went to New Age. This kind of fluctuation between New Age and Christianity, this could only exist in a society that is devoid of any type of structure, any type of communal institutions that protect you and then provide you with the necessities you need to grow and have your children grow. So what you end up doing is you end up shopping for ways to think in the same way you shop for products. Again, this is religious market consumerism, meaning I want Coke, I want Pepsi,
I want a little bit
I want
of this,
Pizza Hut, I want Domino's. And what we're saying is that when we're talking about how you organize your life, it's less about where you think, it's about what you do. So it's not about whether you go to yoga or you go to Bible study. It's about what are you saying about the fact that you live in a nation where homelessness is rife? What are you saying about the fact that you live in a nation where health care is expensive and people die from preventable diseases? What are you saying about the fact that people are getting shot prematurely and not even making it to adulthood?
Or people are dying from fibroids and cancer at the age of 25. Like, that's not normal.
That alcoholism is promoted like it's water. and you have people just like very gleefully poisoning themselves.
Christians will poison themselves,
and they square the alcoholism with Christianity.
Crazy.
You know, they have phrases like Bible and brunch. You see, it's like, so whenever you have this type of schizophrenia going on in society, where people are just very like in the wind and very unstable about committing. You know, because what we're really talking about is the inability to commit. Because commitment always calls you to the table to sacrifice. And what America tells people is that you don't have to sacrifice.
Because Jesus did it for you.
Jesus did it for you.
He died on the cross. So you don't have to sacrifice.
So you can have everything you want. You can have A, B, C, and D. It's not A, B, C, or D. It's A, B, C, and D. You see, so this appetite-driven society, this pleasure-centered society, it creates a energy of non-commitment. It creates a mood of non-commitment to where people are very fickle. They're not going to stick with anything because sticking with something is a threat. Discipline is a threat in a consumerist society, because consumerism is built on the undermining of discipline, the destruction of discipline. All right, so we should discipline ourselves. And the way we discipline ourselves is we remove ourselves from environments of undisciplined people with undisciplined governments and undisciplined media and undisciplined nations.
Because at this point, your presence is consent. You see, and this is why a lot of the New Age and the Christianity, they're very similar, because they like to separate. So they say my testimony, but it's like, well, what's the church's testimony? What is Christianity's testimony as a collective? But see, they do the same thing as the New Agers do. They branch off, and now it's the individualist approach. And so because you live in an individualist nation, your concepts of everything are going to be individual. And this is why my idea is, if you left Christianity and you still live in America, you didn't leave Christianity. Because you grew up. This is the thing. Christianity is a conversion religion. So if you are anything you're brought up in is essentially embedded in you. Right. And so even with us, before we left, we weren't necessarily calling ourselves Christians, but we had ideas that were still embedded in us from our Christian lifestyle. And that's deep in you. And it takes years and years to pull that stuff out, because like I said, it's deep. And so when you went to New Age as a Christian, you were still a Christian. You was just a Christian practicing New Age.
A Christian who doesn't go to church.
A Christian who doesn't go to church. A Christian who rejects the title of Christianity, but your life and everything you did and essentially the things that you found valuable didn't really change. Maybe the books you read changed, or maybe like
how you dress,
maybe, but at this point the Christians and the New Agers look the same. I can't tell the difference. Y'all sound the same, y'all talk the same. You took music, you secularized the Christian music, so now the tone of the music sounds exactly like the world's music. So it's like, not the Christians don't even know how to have a relationship with God without making God conform to what they like. It's like, okay, God, I want to listen to Christian music, but I needed to have a little trap beat to it.
They have to spice it up to make it more consumable, to make it more palatable for the religious market consumption. These are corporate tactics. You know, when you corporatize something, it's about marketability. Meaning it's never about trying to get the consumer to think. It's about getting them to disarm themselves, to allow whatever energy they want to give you to give you. And speaking on that, I wanted to talk about what may be behind, and this is just my theory, what may be behind this rise in online testimonials, where people are saying, well, I used to be a New Age, and then I was doing yoga and I found out that yoga is of the devil, and then I went back to Christianity. So I think,
which it probably is if you're doing it in America.
I think we have to understand that when we're analyzing societies, there's this tendency that whenever there's a period of extreme crisis, trauma, it could be economic crisis, it could be warfare, it could be some type of plague or disease, people typically revert back to the religion tradition that nation was birthed in. So the example, America was committing genocide in Iraq by imposing sanctions on them. This was in the mid-90s. This was led to the murder.
Can y'all hear us now?
Yeah.
Okay, it's back. Okay.
So as I was saying, there's a tendency within history. This is just a historical pattern. I think when you study history, you learn a lot about human behavior. So one of the things about human behavior is whenever you have a nation that's in a place of crisis, it could be economic crisis, it could be warfare, it could be disease. Typically what happens is the people who are most afflicted by that crisis, they tend to rush back to whatever the religion is. They become more fundamentalist. They become more fanatical about whatever religion that birthed that nation.
Right.
And the example I like to give is that in the 1990s, when America was imposing sanctions on Iraq and murdered 500,000 Iraqi children, which Madeleine Albright said was worth it in the Christian nation. Madeleine Albright, Bill Clinton's Secretary of State, said it was worth it to kill 500,000 children from the Christian nation. When that happened in Iraq, what happened was a secular society started to reverse back into a more fundamentalist society where there was no room for real open dialogue, and people started to anchor themselves more in this kind of fantasy about what reality is. Now, I would say similarly in America today, what you see is a nation in economic decline, moral decline, disease,
sexual decline,
diseases like COVID-19, bridges are falling, earthquakes are hitting, all these things are happening to America, and these people who are new age, who was born into Christianity, are now subconsciously picking up the signals that the society is dying.
Right. You know how like when the substitute teacher is there and then the real teacher come back in and now you're going to be like, you got to get serious again?
Yeah.
That's what this is.
So in the subconscious mind, they're picking up that the society is dying. The society is decaying. I need rescue. Well, who was I taught to run to when I needed rescue?
Jesus.
When I was 4, my parents told me about Jesus. So I'm going to run to Jesus, not because I actually want to follow in the footsteps of Jesus, not because I'm prepared to overturn the tables of the money changers today, but I want to be saved.
I want my life to be saved. And that's literally...
I'm acting, and that's why in Christianity you have this narrative of, are you saved? Not are you rebelling? Not are you resisting? Not are you fighting?
Not are you righteous?
Not are you righteous?
Not are you a truth teller?
Not are you rejecting?
No.
Not are you speaking
saved?
out? No, are you saved? Meaning, are you doing the most expedient thing where it's obvious that things are falling apart?
Right.
Why not be that way when things aren't falling apart? Because again, this is an element of what I call moral cowardice, and this is something that is endemic in America. It's literally something that you cannot exist in America without, because it requires a high level of cowardice to look your enemy in the face every day and not kill them. And for me, it wasn't enough to live that way. I say I have to get out of this nation, because I can't continue to look at these beasts and beastesses and not kill them. So I had to say, how do I get to a place where I can at least limit how many times I look at them, and I can discipline my thought in a way that I'm not going to have to deal with people trying to undermine it, people trying to pollute it and the thought of my children. All right, so this is what it means when we talk about the environment being critical, and how we orient ourselves in terms of how we think.
And like we said, like the idea of like, are you saved? It's like you're not asking any real questions. You're trying to get me to do something that is passive. And that's exactly what Christianity is. It's the most passive thing you can do. And they try to create this narrative that you're prosecuted when you become a Christian, and that there's so many people that hate Christians, and nobody loses family members because they become a Christian.
No.
Okay? Nobody loses friends. Nobody loses jobs. Nobody loses anything because they became a Christian. It's very mainstream to be a Christian. Yeah. And so because it's so mainstream, that's how you know there's no power in it. Because if there was power in it, they wouldn't be shopping it out in the way they are. They wouldn't be investing millions and millions of dollars in creating this atmosphere of the church being this fun center. It's just like a big theater. Everybody's on stage with ladders and refrigerators and Fruit Loops and just everything. It's one big theater. They don't take it seriously, and you can tell that the people that are in the congregation don't take it seriously, because what other religion do you see with that type of comical approach? Hindus don't do that. Muslims don't do that. Jews, nobody does it but Christians. Right? And so I don't take Christianity seriously, not necessarily because of the religion and how it was birthed, but because of the people.
Yes, the people.
The people have shown me.
Yes.
I don't need to take this seriously because they don't take it seriously.
Yes.
Their lives don't reflect that they're serious. They drink, they smoke, they cuss, and they do this, and they have it under the guise of God will forgive me. I can repent. There's no element of sacrifice in your life. Your life looks exactly the same as a heathen's life. I can't tell the difference between y'all, so I don't take your religion seriously. Not because of your God, but because of you.
And also, just think of it this way: what would you call a Hebrew who lives in Sodom and Gomorrah? You would call them a sodomite. Even if they followed the rituals and the laws of Moses, you still would call them a sodomite because they live in Sodom and Gomorrah. And we're saying, even if you so, we have to understand how we orient ourselves and how we define ourselves spiritually is connected to the social. Meaning, how do we relate to social injustice? Do we even have a social conscience? Because a lot of Christian, when we're talking about Christianity, what you see is the complete absence of social consciousness. Absence, meaning you can never go to a church and hear a sermon about nuclear warfare.
No. What is the Christian position on nuclear weapons?
What is the kingdom position on nuclear warfare?
Can somebody tell us in the chat? What is the Christian position on nuclear weapons?
So that brings us to our next point, which is neither Christianity nor the New Age have developed explicit policies. And I'm not talking about what you think is individual, because remember,
as a whole,
the church is a collective, meaning it's you're supposed to have any institution that's worth its salt is going to be able to articulate a policy that they all can say, we agree on this. It's a consensus. We all say this is true. So neither Christianity nor New Age have developed an explicit policy to deal with the criminal elements of American culture. And both have created methods to accommodate social injustice through consumerism.
Yes.
Okay, so they accommodate social injustice through consumerism. This is the megachurch pastors when they buy private jets and Mercedes Benzes, prosperity gospels. Money cometh to me now. You see, that's something that the churches would do often.
I literally did that before in my church.
I'm favored by God because I get all of the tokens of American capitalism.
Right. God bless me with this job, with this house, with this car. It's never like God bless my people.
Yes, He blessed me with peace of mind. Blessed me with wisdom. Blessed me with foresight. Blessed me with patience. Those qualities aren't highlighted because it's always given to us in a context of I want what they have.
Yes.
I want to become someone different. Not I want to be transformed from the inside out. I want to be transformed from the outside in. You see, so they literally reverse even the process.
Yeah.
You see, because they're saying you measure your change based on what happens internally, not externally. There is no external metric for self-transformation.
No.
Self-transformation begins internally and ends internally.
And it requires immense sacrifice.
Yes.
And that's why I said Christians can't sacrifice because they think Jesus did it for them. So they reject any opportunity to sacrifice. They actually dodge sacrifice because they think that they don't have to engage in it. And that's really the only way. And that's why our ancestors do that. That's why we continuously engage in sacrifice.
Yes.
Because we understood we can't live without sacrifice. That's like breathing for us. So when you remove that, you're essentially suffocating. Spiritually, you're suffocating. And now you're clinging to any spiritual system you can. And that's what Christianity and New Age is, because they ain't sacrificing neither.
And we have to understand sacrifice, this isn't something that you learn through New Age or Christianity.
No.
Sacrifice is in our DNA, meaning it's born with us. Sacrifice is childbirth. Sacrifice is breastfeeding. Sacrifice is risking your life for your family. That's sacrifice.
Sacrifice is moving.
You see, moving. And then what happens is when you live a life of sacrifice, whatever system of thought they bring to you, you're going to be able to interpret it in the way it's supposed to be interpreted. Because you have the spirit to receive it. But if you have a nation of people who refuse sacrifice, who reject sacrifice, you can give them the truth in the most explicit way possible, and they aren't going to know what to do with it because their spirit is closed to receiving it. Because sacrifice opens you up to receive whatever someone gives you.
Yes.
All right?
And you think your tithes and offerings is what is you're supposed to be sacrificing, ma'am.
No.
That tithe and offerings is not gonna cut it. Okay,
10%.
And it's at the point now where it's like Christians been praying. I remember when I was in the church, we used to pray for the nation, pray for the nation, pray for the government, pray for the military, everybody, pray for everybody. And I noticed the more Christians pray, the worse the society gets. Have y'all noticed that?
It's like they're praying for the devil.
I can't listen to Christian prayers no more.
Yeah.
Because at this point, I'm like, this might be a curse.
Yeah.
This probably is based on what I've seen manifest after the prayers. I'm good, right? And it's not just because the people aren't living the lives they're supposed to. They're in the wrong place. They're in the wrong place, sending these prayers up, and God's back is already turned.
He's like, you're in my enemy's house.
You're in my enemy's house, so I can't hear you.
Because America is the enemy of God. All right.
If you didn't know that yet,
America is the enemy of justice, of righteousness.
Right.
They're the enemy of anything good. You see, so when you're saying a prayer from the enemy's house, it doesn't matter what the content of the prayer is. You're in the enemy's house.
And let's show all the Bibles we got. Let's show, because we read the Bible a lot, right? We got Bible dictionaries. We got multiple Bibles. We have the lost books of the Bible. So listen, like we not.
This is the Queen James version, and I call it Queen James because King James is a faggot.
And so
this is the lost books. Or they call them the Apocrypha. These are the books that they didn't put in the King James.
Right. And this is the Bible dictionary, which basically gives you a guide to help you understand what you're reading. You can't just read the Bible without a dictionary, y'all. But then
this is the
big one,
the Everyday Life Bible. Actually, this is authored by Joyce Myers. She's like a Yoruba woman. This is like a gift from a family member. I would never buy this version, but we're just trying to basically demonstrate that when you want to have a position on anything, you have to commit to studying it and extracting from it.
And it takes time, y'all. It takes time. But I'm noticing, I feel that when people go, when they do the flip-flop thing, where they go from Christianity to New Age and then back to Christianity, I notice that they're so quick to give the testimony. It's like they almost like, I got something to say, because what's happening is there really are no testimonies outside of, you going from one religion to another. There's really no saving or blessings that are really happening to people right now in America. Like it feels very destitute, and you can feel it in your spirit. And so now they're looking for anything that they can say, look, God saved me. I chose to go into this new age practice and God saved me from it. And it's like, well, can you at least just give yourself some time, right? Give yourself some time, because we left Christianity, in 2020, and we took our time in getting to this point where we're talking about it in this way. And I feel that it's this eagerness to try to prove that God is really there. It's like, look, I was doing this and now I'm not doing it because God saved me. And it's like, okay, give yourself some time. You see, give yourself some time, because what you're not realizing, like Baba said earlier, is a lot of this is opportunism, and you're not even aware of it. You think you can feel that the nation is falling. You can feel that there's something missing, and you're clinging back to what you knew prior. The only really thing that has given you a context of what the end of the world looks like is the Bible. And so because of that, it's easy to cling back to that. Right. The more the society looks like it's going out. Right. And so a lot of this isn't really truly you, right? This isn't really you. This is just a society that has literally programmed you and bred you and raised you up in this Christian belief. And now you're just going back to it. So it's really important that you give yourself time, but it's also important to understand that the Bible was doctored. Bible said this. And I noticed that the Bible talks a lot about the world, and it kind of gets you to try to believe that all of these things are going to happen in the globe. The whole world is going to fall. The whole world is going to end. And it's like, no.
It's just America.
It's just Babylon, or it's just wherever there's a lot of heinous things happening. But when you have the belief that it's the world, now you feel less inclined to do something, because you're like, the whole world's going to suffer. There's nothing for me to do. See, and it's like, no, they intentionally doctored a lot, and that's why the Bible dictionary is important, and studying is important, so you can really understand. They're talking about nations.
Yeah.
They're talking about specific nations that continuously show that they blaspheme God. They have curse words like Jesus effing Christ. Every movie, they say Jesus effing Christ.
Yeah, have you ever heard a Muslim use the name of the Prophet Muhammad and a swear word next to it? Because they actually have reverence
for their God,
for their prophets.
And I never see I never see Christians complaining like, dang, I can't go to the movie theater and listen to one movie without them saying Jesus effing Christ. You see, like that's the type of stuff I'm saying. It's like this. You don't even revere your own God. Your own Savior is literally being cussed and blasphemed, and they create memes about Jesus and it's jokes about Jesus. I've seen Christians share videos of people dressed like Jesus dancing like a fag. Like y'all don't take your own God seriously. And it's some of this ain't your fault. You don't know how to take it seriously because you haven't sacrificed, and you live in a psychopathic, autistic society. America is autistic society, collective autism, meaning people don't know how to have reverence for anything. So that's why when you start talking to me about Christianity, I'm like, where you live?
Yeah.
You live in America? I don't want to hear from you.
Yeah.
If you live in a different nation, a different part of the world, we can talk. I can stomach you. I can sit down and we can talk, and we can learn from each other. But I don't want to hear from you if you are living in the West.
Yeah. If you're living in America, your religion should be killing America. And then after you kill America, then pick up some other religion.
Because America
but no
killed
other
your savior.
religion is going to exist in that place.
No.
It's not. And again, we're speaking from a perspective of research and history.
Yes.
You know, and even on the aspect of tradition, Yorugu culture, always it has no space for reverence.
None.
So even when we're talking about the eclipse, traditionally in Africa, African people, when an eclipse, you go inside.
And
because when the sun is obscured, this is supposed to be a moment of solemn reflection.
Something is off.
Something is off. There's an imbalance in the universe. So it would be disrespectful to look up at the sky while the sun is in a state of imbalance. You have to look inward and say, how can I show gratitude for the Creator, for all that I've gotten, and then show further gratitude when the sun reappears. You see, so it's supposed to be a moment of self-reflection and self-transformation. What are they doing in America?
Go out and look.
Religious market consumption. Here, buy some eclipse glasses. Everybody's traveling to the Midwest to point up at the sky. Take a road trip. You see how they trivialize things? You see how there's nothing sacred in that place? Even when the sun itself, is going through a cosmic process, they still don't have a sense of reverence. You see, and what we're saying is any place that is that, for lack of retarded, and I'm using it in the right way. Any nation that is that spiritually retarded cannot possibly sustain a religious institution. Religious institutions will fail there because religions need collectives. It's not an individual thing.
No,
it's a communal thing. And when you have a society that is organized along these lines, it literally kills religions. It kills discipline. It kills spirituality.
And essentially Christianity created New Age because it kept secularizing itself. And so what happened is the more Christians start being like, you can wear jeans to church, we're having a teen night and we're going to have rap music that sounds like Christian music. I used to go to a church that literally had a teen section and we had Christian rap music.
Hallelujah.
Right. We had Christian rap music, or they had the strobe light. This was back in the early 2000s, right? They was doing this a long time ago. Yet, after a while, people started having sex on campus in the church. It got real bad that it had to get shut down. So, but that was the start of the secularization of the church. They started secularizing, and the more you make that opening, the more you start saying, you can wear what you want, say what you want, go where you want. You can have brunch and mimosas. The more you make that big like that, you're broadening the person's appetite for pleasure. And then they get to a point where it's like, I don't want to do this no more. I just want to be a New Age. I'm gonna go over here and start talking to chakras and doing all these things over here because I'm pleasured out. Like I need more pleasure. And then they go it's a gateway drug, right? So that's why I'm like, Christianity created New Age, but then y'all mad that people are New Age. It's like, but y'all are cousins, ma'am, sir. Y'all are the same. And the person who left the church just got to a point where they're like, I need more pleasure. They go, they dibble and dabble, and then as the society starts to show that it's on its way out, they go back to what they know, which is Christianity.
So point number 4 is that the perceived conflict between Christians and New Agers fits a historical pattern of Wolfpack behavior, where domination is the goal and not liberation or, quote, winning souls. So what this is basically saying is that whenever you have two entities that exist in the same culture, they can't meaningfully be in conflict because that conflict would jeopardize the existence of that culture. So what you have is you'll have conflict along superficial lines, but on the issues that are substantive, you have agreement. So, and I like to use the Wolfpack analogy because this is just another aspect of Yorugu culture. Yorugus practice ritualized fighting.
Yeah, we talk about this a
lot. They fight each other because aggression is their kind of, for lack of a better word, love language. Through aggression, that's how they bond. That's how they understand the nature of their opponent. They have to fight in intense battle. But usually the aggression, it gets so intense to the point that they understand if we continue to go at each other, then we're going to destroy the culture. So what they do is they sideline the aggression temporarily, and then they combine their energies to attack their external enemy. So for white people, that would be Africans.
Right.
For America, that would be any place outside of America, because remember, it's an imperialist culture. So what you see between New Age and Christianity is they're competing for who's going to control the minds of the youth.
Absolutely.
Who's going to control the minds of the young, of the next generation, and manage these corporations that manage these militaries, manage these political institutions. All of this, they're competing over that control.
Right.
And this is why you see this aspect of secularization, because secularization is where the young people are.
That's where
they're not interested in wisdom.
Right.
You know, and I'm talking about this in the mainstream. I'm not talking about this because you have exceptions to every rule.
Yeah.
But we're talking about the rule in the mainstream. The culture is heavily secular. And because of this heavy secularization, you have this intense competition between Christians and New Agers over who can pleasure them the most. Who can give them the most ecstasy under the guise of order.
Yes.
You see, because both of them, they all have their both discourses and narratives about order. But beneath that like veil of order, there's a lot of appetite-driven behavior.
And you can look at their lifestyle. That's
you can look
key.
at the lifestyle.
You don't look at what the Christian or the New Age person says.
Yeah.
Look at their lifestyle.
Yeah.
And the lifestyle is what communicates what they really believe.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Same thing with us. Don't go up what we say. Look at our lifestyle. Look at how we've structured our life. Look at the things that we say. Look at the things we've sacrificed to be able to say the things that we say. That's how you can really get at what the essence of who we are and what we're guided by.
Yeah.
Christians, they want to be able to say they believe in Jesus and literally do exactly the same things.
Right.
Maybe change one or two different things about how they move.
Right.
But essentially their life is exactly the same.
Right. So ultimately, Christians don't, despite commentary to the contrary, Christians don't hate New Agers.
No, they don't.
They just hate that New Agers are telling on them. Meaning, whenever a person leaves the church and becomes New Age, what they do is they usually, in the process of leaving, they start to disclose all the contradictions and dysfunctions that exist within the church. And I also would say they don't hate New Age because typically, if a Christian was so sensitive, their sense of justice was so sensitive that they could condemn somebody for doing yoga or burning incense or any of the things that we typically associate with New Age, well, they definitely would condemn the President of the United States.
Easily.
They definitely would condemn Israel for committing genocide.
Easily.
They definitely would condemn, any imperialist nation in history. They definitely would condemn white people for raping us for centuries. But they're very quiet about these massive, monumental, historical crimes. But they focus laser-like on, look at him over there doing mindful breathing. And I'm like, okay, so this isn't coming out of a place of morality.
It's not.
This is coming out of a place of self-interest.
Yes.
This is coming out of a place of religious market consumption.
This is bully behavior.
This is bully behavior.
Yes.
You're hitting somebody who you know can't hit you back. You see, because New Agers don't talk about killing people. New Agers, they talk about nirvana and becoming one with the universe.
Right.
But real warriors, they say, how do I separate you from the universe?
Right.
How do I kick the evil out of the universe?
And that's one of the biggest issues with New Age is they have no position on race.
Yeah.
And it's really for white people.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not for black people. So, and this is really black people in the West. They feel that this is their only way to show that they're knowledgeable is by talking about New Age ideas and reading all these books. So the Christian, the New Age person is very knowledgeable. They know how to study, they know how to read, they know how to do all these things, but they lack they're in the wrong environment and they lack the courage and they lack the consistency, just like their brother, the Christian, their sister, the Christian. Neither one of them have that ability to really go against the grain for real, right? They like to give you the illusion that they can, but they really can't because, like Baba said, they're cowards, spiritual cowards, because that's what Christianity turns you to. When you live in a Christian nation, regardless of what you call yourself, you live in a Christian nation, you're a Christian.
And remember, the Christianity, the popular Christianity that's practiced today, most all of it was structured by the Roman Empire.
Yes.
Now, we can talk about the Ethiopians. I know people like to bring that up, but I'm saying today, the Christianity...
That's not the Christianity you're practicing.
of today is the Christianity of Constantine, okay? The Roman Emperor Constantine.
Right.
And if you know anything about the Romans, they were notorious faggots. They was notorious cowards. They was notorious
just like
killers
Christians
and pedophiles. So you can't have a people who come from an entire civilization of cowardice and not have that cowardice somehow leak into how they organize their religions. Okay, so we have to remember when we're taking in Christianity, or we're taking in any source of Christianity, we should be conscious of that. Not discard the book, because again, it's coded. So we just have to know how to read it with discernment and say, okay, this is the part that came from Rome, but this is the part that came from Africans, and this is the part that I can apply. This part is propaganda. But that won't happen in a society that disincentivizes you to be disciplined. All right? So point number 5 is the critical mission for all spiritual practice is to annihilate the enemies of justice and order, which means white people. Christianity and New Agers are both silent when it comes to launching any attack against white enemies. So I already talked about this. So African people, so we have to ask, okay, what about the African continent? Africans are colonized, right? Like, because neo-colonialism, as they say. So I would say African people have adapted Christianity to their value system, and this preserves their decency. But Westerners are demonic in all contexts because their culture is demonic. Now, does that mean that African people are operating on the same level that they did pre-colonial times? No, that would be just factually untrue. But what we're saying is that when you go to the ground level in the African society, you see a reverence for children. You see a reverence for motherhood. You see a reverence for nature. And any types of abuse and disorder, you can always trace it to that foreign element, that colonial element intruding upon the African space. You see, and when we're talking about a Western environment, these are environments that are not I want to say native, but the native population has been genocided. Okay, so when you genocide the native population, the entire character of that space changes fundamentally. You see, the essence of that space, because remember, when we're talking about culture, this is about your connection to land. Okay, so African people, they have a connection to their land. Are they oppressed? Yes. Are they, being blocked out of ways of living and existing that they practiced prior to colonialism? Yes, but they still have that basic ingredient, that basic seed to rebuild an identity called land. Okay, but so when you rip a person from their land, you're ripping them from their culture. And their God. And their God, right. Because remember, our God was connected traditionally in Africa to our land, where our ancestors were buried. That was all combined into one unit.
And that's why intentionally, when you know history, you know that Europeans, when they were here, they intentionally asked us, where's your most sacred spaces? Where your gods and your ancestors buried? Oh, over there? Okay, that's where I want to build that church at. They were very intentional about finding where we found our most sacred parts of our land. That was where they wanted to colonize and kill the most on those lands. So they know this. We just don't know it because we don't really understand.
So essentially, that again underscores the importance of environment. Christianity takes on different forms depending on if the people who are practicing are still connected to their landmass, because that landmass, that's going to give them a sense of being that is greater than their oppressor, if that makes sense. Okay, the oppressor only takes root when you rob somebody of their land. Okay,
let's talk about the thing with Judaism, Christianity, New Age, and then back to Judaism. Okay, so Christianity
is an offspring of Judaism. As we know, Judaism, this came before Christianity. That's why you got the Old Testament before the New.
That's what Jesus was practicing.
So we basically have come up with a model, and this model says that Judaism, Christianity, and New Age exist on a circle, a cycle, basically, and each one of these shifts from Judaism to Christianity or Christianity to the New Age, this is all coming out of a culture of non-commitment. So when we're talking about Judaism, we're talking about the Old Testament laws, as they say, the laws of Moses. Then we're talking about Christianity, they call it the New Covenant. The New Covenant, our argument is that the New Covenant came about because the people who followed the old one couldn't follow it. Okay, so they this too hard. Or another way of putting it is the rituals couldn't be practiced. It was an element of, I guess you could say, secularization.
Too much sacrifice.
So they abandoned the Old Testament or the Old Covenant and they move over to the new one. Then within Christianity, when I was talking about the age of reason, what was that? That was another split. That was another inability to commit to whatever the Catholic Church was demanding of Europeans. They couldn't do it, so they said, okay, we have to split again. And that's when the secularism comes from. That's where the science comes from. The materialism comes from. That all comes out of that. So what you're seeing is at each stage, whether we're talking about Judaism, Christianity, or New Age, there's this common thread of lack of discipline, inability to follow, and that's because within white cultures, discipline is not a trait.
No.
They're infantile
no
people.
discipline.
So when we say somebody is infantile, what we're saying is they lack the capacity to mature, meaning they're eternal children. This is even our Kemetic ancestor said this. When they met one of the Greeks named Solon, there's a Kemetic priest, and he says, you Greeks are always children. You see, meaning, and Greeks are supposed to be the highest level.
That was
so if the highest
civilization.
level of white culture, the Greek culture, our ancestors was calling them children, then everything after the Greeks has to be more childish.
Exactly.
All right. So all of these different manifestations of thought that you see from Judaism to Christianity to New Age and then, in the West.
And then,
in the West, I have to keep saying that in the West, because we're talking about the culture, these are all reflections of non-commitment, you know, and how non-commitment is a cultural characteristic of Western society.
It's ingrained in Western society to the point where when you start actually sacrificing and you start actually not being hypocritical, you start losing friends. You start losing family members because they're like, I only know how to relate to people who are hypocrites. I only know how to relate to people who don't sacrifice, because the other thing about sacrifice is the more you do it, the more you require the people in your space to do it too. So it's too dangerous for one person in the group to start sacrificing, because now you're gonna be looking at your family and your friends and being like, I don't see you sacrificing. How can we meet this? And it's like you can't have that. So what you do is you reject the person who sacrifices, and you just, like you said, you put Jesus on the cross and say he sacrificed for me, so I don't have to.
So, and this is just to reinforce the central point, which is, again, the critical mission of all spiritual practice is to annihilate the enemies of justice and order, meaning white people. So the next point we had within this point was that the Christian defense, and remember, we're talking as a collective. We ain't talking about what you think as an individual. We're saying if we did a survey, we know what would come out. The Christian defense of
They've already done
surveys.
And Christians agree with it.
The Christian defense of Israeli genocide is evidence that Satan is winning in every aspect of American political society. New Agers are tacitly defending Israeli genocide by refusing to abandon Western society. And I could add to this, because I know people like, what about Congo? America supports that genocide too. What about Sudan?
Christians do too.
America supports that genocide too.
And Christians do too.
Genocide of any type, America supports. And what we're saying is that as a Christian person, you have a moral obligation to condemn genocide.
Period.
You have a moral obligation to condemn evil. And what you find is that not only are Christians not condemning genocide, they will literally justify it. They will call the kikes in Israel the followers of Jesus, who's not the followers of Jesus, but the people who are bringing about the second coming of Jesus.
Which is crazy, because they're not even Christians. They're practicing Judaism.
They'll have Holy Land tours, you know, of this land that has been ethnically cleansed. So it's holy because it's been ethnically cleansed, not paying any attention to the humanity of Palestinians. So any people who can look at this level of open genocide and continue to remain silent or supportive of it, that's showing that all this stuff about God and the Holy Spirit is smokescreen. They actually believe in Satan, and it's evident in their support for genocide. All right, so they have to be called out on that. This is not a religious or spiritual thing. This is a satanic thing.
It is, and this is why we say God has turned its back on Christians in the West. And this is why America looks as horrible as it is, because majority of the people in America are Christians. So how can you justify that? How does that make sense if the majority of the country are Christians? Yet it's one of the most unsafe, sadistic, horrendous societies to live in. How does that make sense?
So I think we already mentioned the model. So connecting Judaism, Christianity, and New Age. But I just wanted to add that New Age. So we have to ask, okay, I already talked about New Age starting in the 1700s and the 1960s is second wave. So, but New Age is also a blowback, I feel, from the secularization of the church, or what Christians call unchurching. And this is a phrase we've heard in person.
They literally
said
it in
America,
church.
we were sitting in the church. It was one of these like more modern, updated
hippie churches.
And they was like, we want to appeal to the unchurched person,
people.
Meaning people who don't have discipline, people who like to put their hat in both rooms.
Who like to wear J's on stage.
Who like to wear like jeans, skinny jeans, and sneakers while they preach. And so, I'm pointing out these things sound trivial, but again, whenever you have a religious institution, order is very important because order builds solidarity. Without order, you have no solidarity. But the issue is solidarity isn't a value. And if solidarity isn't a value, then order isn't going to be a value.
Nope.
What you want is what? Consumers. You want them to just come back. You can be as, and this is also how they abuse the concept of mercy. Mercy is only warranted when the person who's asking for it is making the sacrifices to be worthy of it. But what Christians do is they abuse the mercy.
They really do.
And they consciously and premeditatedly do things that they know they shouldn't be doing with the idea that I'm going to be forgiven.
He's a merciful God. He'll forgive me.
If any child did this to the parent, they would be disowned. Because they was like, you're not even taking my instruction. I see no progress. I see no sense of remorse.
You're habitually disrespectful.
Yes, this constant reference to, I'm forgiven. And it's like, what are you doing to make yourself worthy of that forgiveness?
And it's crazy because they will argue that the New Testament God is different. The Old Testament God is the one that was more harsh, and the New Testament God is nicer. But I'm like, well, in Matthew, that's New Testament, and he was saying if you abuse children, you should be hung. Yeah. So even in the New Testament, there's limits to God's mercy. Yes. There's limits, and the Christian abuses every limit. They're like the annoying child that literally just keeps doing it until the parent has to be like, okay, now I gotta yank you. You see, but it's like it shouldn't take that. And this is why people who truly have sacrifice in their life, the more you sacrifice, the more Christianity and New Age become more repulsing to you because of the people and how they just continuously have no reverence, no respect, no discipline, no anything, yet they want you to be a Christian like them. And I'm like, why would I want to be that? I want discipline. I want order. I want sacrifice. I want there to be standards. I want morals. And I can't have that in America. And neither can you. You don't even have it. You think you have it because you said Jesus come into my life. But Jesus is also looking, or God is also looking for you to do something different like he did. What did he do? He threw up the tables. What have you overturned in your life that will cause people to want to kill you? Because that's what happened.
Yeah, right after, like 2 verses later, they said the priest then decided that they wanted to kill him.
So what have you done as a Christian that has caused people to say, I got to take her out. Yeah. I got to take him out. What have you done? You haven't done anything. Your life is very status quo. You lost no friends. You lost no anything. Jesus lost a lot. He told his disciples to leave your children and your families and come with me. That's a sacrifice. What have you sacrificed in magnitude? That will cause people to look at you like you're crazy, or will cause your life to look completely different. That's what we've done, and we're not Christians, but our lives somehow mimic Christian beliefs better than a lot of Christians. That's interesting, isn't it?
So our last point is, and this is just wrapping it up, making it more relevant to things that are happening soon, very soon. The upcoming
a few hours.
So the upcoming solar eclipse on April 8th is evidence that neither Christians nor New Agers have a deep understanding of prophecy. Because neither have interpreted as a cause of action. So this is, again, when we're talking about things like solar eclipses, this isn't exclusive to end times theology of Christians or Judaism or Islam. This is universal, meaning every culture has a perspective, an approach on how to respond when the sun is being obscured by the moon.
When the earth is communicating
when the earth is communicating, when cosmic bodies are making these kind of dramatic signs in the sky. There is no culture of belief that doesn't have a perspective on this. But what we're finding is that in the American response to this, it's literally another excuse to further inaction. It's another excuse to keep doing what you're already doing.
To relinquish control.
You see, meaning we were consuming before the eclipse, we're going to consume more during the eclipse. You see, there is no sense of like reverence, as we said.
None.
So, and this is, we feel a bad omen for the fate of America. Even if nothing catastrophic happens on that day, just knowing how human civilizations rise and fall, this spells the end of America, in their lack of wisdom, their lack of awareness about where they are in history.
And look into the skies and being able to understand signs and wonders. That's not a new age thing.
No.
That's an indigenous thing.
Yeah.
That's a thing that people with spirituality and have a deep connection to the earth and to God have always practiced. Meaning, you can look at even Asians. You can look at any ancient spiritual systems. They have a stance on what nature and how to commune with nature and how to understand nature. So that's not new age. New age is just these people cherry picking. I want a little bit of Hindu. I want a little bit of Kemet. I want a little bit of Christianity, a little bit of Buddhism, and I'm just gonna put it all together. That's what new age is. So but I think Christians, they think that because you're saying, no, this is a sign that's some type of new age energy, and it's like, no, that's not what that means.
Yeah. So now I want to talk a little about what's called Christian eschatology. And eschatology, this is just basically what I was talking about, the end time theology.
Right.
Like the book of Revelations. What is the world going to end like? They call that eschatology. So Christian eschatology creates a passive approach towards history and causes them to divest from bettering their present or investing in their future. And they universalize this insanity to make everyone as passive as they are.
Right.
So basically, this is the idea of, I don't have to invest in tomorrow because Jesus is coming tomorrow.
Jesus is coming tomorrow.
I don't have to invest in next year because Jesus is coming next year. I don't have to invest in next month because Jesus is coming back next month. So what this does is it creates this sense of, I don't have to do anything because the fate of the world is already sealed and it's not determined upon what I do today. You see? So, and to be an African, and we're not talking about new age, we're talking about genetics now. To be an African is to understand that time is circular. It's a cycle. It's not a straight line. That means you're always in the now and you're living for now, but you also understand there is a tomorrow, but that knowledge of what's going to happen tomorrow doesn't impede what you do in the now. And then you use the past as inspiration of what to do in the now. So what we're saying is that when you put somebody in this Christian culture, this culture of we're all racing off the cliff, we're all going to die.
Jesus is coming back any day.
We're all going to die in a fiery explosion.
The end times is near.
Fire is going to rain from the sky, and we're going to get raptured up to heaven. All this is designed to induce passivity, to induce, why should I fight my oppressor? Because God is going to get him tomorrow.
Here tomorrow, right?
You see? So we have to abandon that.
And that's somebody who grew up deep in the church. And I'm not just talking like going to church. Like, I was deep in the church, speaking in tongues, laying hands, all that for years. Parents deep in the church, deacons, all that. So when I talked to Bible, I told him that was one of the most detrimental things about Christianity that happened to my life, was I created this reality that didn't know how to see things in the ahead. So I was very because I was always thinking any day God can return. Jesus could come at any point. We live in the end times. Anytime the Jesus is coming. We used to watch them movies called The Rapture, when the people would just disappear and their clothes would be laying on a chair. And so that was my mind. In my mind, I was just like, why do I need to care about my life? Why do I need to invest in my son? Why do I need to invest in myself? Why do I need to do these things if at any moment everything could end? And so it literally, like Baba said, it creates this passive person that doesn't know how to really value themselves and the people around them. And this is what Christianity has done. And even if you leave Christianity, you still have this very end of the world mentality. And this is why they constantly show you movies. They show you movies and they give you all of these stories about the world ending constantly. Why do you think they're doing that? If they're really of God and they're really people who have reverence for God, why do they have so much anxiety about the end? You see, why is there so much anxiety about the end? And they're pushing that anxiety inside of you, and it's manifesting in how you approach relationships, how you approach your children, how you approach society. That anxiety goes with you everywhere. And that was one of the most detrimental things that I feel like I took from Christianity, was I didn't know how to see my life a year from now. I was living for right then, because why do I care? He could come back at any moment.
And this is just, I think, a historical point that I think is very illuminating in terms of power dynamics.
Yeah.
So if you look back when the Roman Empire was ruling the world, whenever they wanted to know what the end was, they would go to Sibyls, African women. And they would ask these African women, what is the fate of the Roman Empire? And really they was asking about the end of the world, because they thought that their empire was the world. So they was asking African women about what the end is going to look like. Now you fast forward hundreds of years, and what do you have now? We have the descendants of those African women looking to the descendants of the Romans to ask them what the end is.
What is the end going to look like?
They don't know what the end is, because they was asking us what the end was thousands of years ago.
And we told them, and it's Revelation.
And we told them.
We told them what it was.
We told them what their end was.
Right.
But we didn't tell them what our end was. Because, and this is why we didn't have a concept of our end.
Right.
Because for Africans, there is no end.
No, there is no
There
end.
is no beginning. You see, all there is
no heaven or hell.
There's birth and there's rebirth. There's birth and there's rebirth.
Right.
On into infinity. So once we understand that concept, what that does is it empowers us to act. It empowers us to do something, because we know that the end is an illusion.
Yep, and this is why our ancestors were able to fight in the way they were. That's why they were able to jump over ships and take their babies. They like, this is nothing. I'm not about to stand here and let you torture me to death. Absolutely not. I'm about to jump into this ocean. I'll let these sharks eat me, because I'll just be back. But when you are fueled with fear and anxiety, you believe that there's a heaven and a hell, you're not going to jump off the ship. You're going to let the oppressor oppress you.
Yes.
And this is why they gave us Christianity, because they needed us to stay alive, because they saw we was willing to die before we would worship their God.
And they would give our ancestors who was in the hulls of those ships, they would give us Christianity before we got off the ship. Yep. Meaning, the first thing that would happen.
Tell them the story, Bible. Tell them the story. Tell them how they gave us Christianity.
This is the African introduction to Christianity, and this is in a book, by the way, by DeGraff Johnson. It's called African Glory. Okay, so he talks about this, and he says, J.C. DeGraff Johnson, that's his name. So he says, when the ship would dock on the shores of North America, they would bring the enchained captives, the Africans, to the deck of the ship. When they brought them to the deck of the ship, they would line them up in a row. And then a white man, usually a priest, he would walk up to the women, he would fondle them. He would put his fingers inside of them. He would taste their sweat. He would taste their blood. Then he would spit in their face, just to show them that just because I felt you up, that don't mean I like you. You're still a beast. And then after he spit in their face, he would open the Bible and says, your new God is named Jesus. Okay? And then they take the chains off and march you off the ship. Okay, so that's your introduction to Christianity.
To Jesus.
Okay? This sense of degradation, this sense of doom and death. And I'm saying any population where that's the beginning can't have a good end unless they reject that beginning and say we had a beginning prior to that.
Remember when Mike Tyson was smudging spit in people's face?
Yes,
that was the introduction to Christianity.
So the inability of Christians and New Agers to perceive and take radical action in response to the social signs and symbols of judgment reflects a shared investment in the status quo. Despite many signs, Christians and New Agers have proven themselves incapable of conversion. And what is conversion? The radical reorganization of your living environment and the meaning you give to life. The first part, notice I said the meaning part second. It's not just I think life is like, I'm one with the universe. It's like, what is about my physical environment, the people around me, the influences around me, the sounds, the smells, the visions. What about my immediate environment is changed? You have to radically reorganize that, meaning people are going to disappear and you're never going to see them again. That's the first part of conversion. Leave your mother and father and follow me.
That's what he said.
That's the first part of conversion.
That's what your Savior said.
So conversion isn't necessarily in the mind first. It's literally it's like you have to move. Like you literally have to get to higher ground. Then when you're on that higher ground and you observe your environment,
talk about a relationship.
Then you assign a new meaning to your life. And then you organize your life to live on that path. That's conversion. It's not just getting dunked in water. That's not conversion. That's symbolic of conversion. Right. But real conversion is you move and then your mind changes based on that change in environment. All right. So it's nature and nurture. It's that combination of the external and internal. All right. So both Christians and New Agers are treating the eclipse as a moment of entertainment and not a period for reverence and self-evaluation. So I already talked about that. So again, all indigenous cultures interpret eclipses as a moment of self-evaluation and reverence, not a moment of spectacle, because that's what they've turned it into in America. They've turned it into a consumer spectacle.
Absolutely.
All right?
And they do that with everything. They don't know how to approach anything, like we said, of reverence with respect and understanding, because they're children, they're infantile. And you can get the essence of a people just by looking at how they approach serious topics. Everything is a joke. Everything is satire. Everything is like, they create these movies like Don't Look Up, where they're talking about the world ending, but it's a big joke.
Yeah.
You see, like, this is who you're dealing with. And these are people who would claim Christianity. These are people who live in a Christian nation. You see, and so this eclipse, this is symbolic. This is a symbol to communicate to you that there's some imbalance here. Even the fact that it came in 2017 and it's back again. They said that that's typically not normal.
Usually about a 200-year gap between two events of this type. So it seems like something in the cosmos has become impatient. Like, I'm going to have to give you even a higher frequency of signs, because the first sign you just like ignored. So I'm going to give you another one.
Right. You're doing a lot of praying, but you're not doing a lot of moving.
Yeah.
So we can pray because we pray. We prayed before we did this video.
Yeah.
But there also has to be movement. You see, there's no movement. There's just prayer and complacency. Prayer and stagnancy. Prayer and just anything opposite to what they want. And so what we have to understand is there has to be resistance. Any religion you practice, you should be creating resistance for people outside of that religion. You see, there is no resistance from Christians. When you become a Christian, nobody rejects you. You see, like, and they've created this narrative that they're prosecuted when you're a Christian, and it's just not true. You're celebrated when you're a Christian. Okay, that's just the reality. So what we have to understand is these options that they've given us, these religious, spiritual options that they have given you in the West, all of them are devoid of substance. All of them separate you further from God. All of them ensure your demise is with them. Because remember, Satan's whole goal is to do what? Gather people in mass and they want all of wants all of people who aren't Satan to go to hell with her. You see, like, that's the goal of the devil. And so that's essentially what Christianity is. Christianity is, I'm Satan. How can I get more people to worship something that is going to also further their demise, just like mine is? And this, you can tell, is winning. And this is why the prince of the world, majority of the nation, is Christian. Yes.
So that kind of I think is a good closer to what we're trying to convey here. But ultimately, we say these things not in a spirit of prejudice. You know, this isn't something that we haven't like thought hard and long about. Like Mama Jahi said, this is a video that we've wanted to make for quite some time, probably over a year. You know, we've wanted to make a video at least, and we feel that the urgency of this message, it should hit people, because if it doesn't, it just reinforces our point that what you're living in isn't what it appears to be. You know, we shouldn't be deceived by our individual, comforts, our individual sense of security. Remember, comfort and security is always a collective reality. Meaning, I am because we are. Meaning, if your brother and sister is being assaulted and trafficked and dismembered and whatever heinous crime you can think of, that's happening to you too. So you should act with that same sense of urgency as though it was happening to you.
Right. And that's how we acted. That's why we was like, because nothing was happening to us when we left America. No. We had really everything we needed, but we were still like, our people are being abused. This is not, we can't stand by and watch this, and our presence is tacitly agreeing with this. That's why we left. Because we could have easily been like, we got everything we need. We got a church home, we got a car, we got a space to live, we got our son in school, we got dogs. Like, what we need to move for?
And it's not easy.
It's not easy.
What in life worth doing is easy.
And so, like, my question earlier was Christians and New Ager, but mainly Christians. What have you done that has radically changed your life, that has put you on that same level of doing something that will cause people to want to harm you? or cause people to want to hurt you in a way because the way you're practicing Christianity.
What spaces have you been barred from?
Yeah, what spaces are you like? You're not allowed in this space because you practicing that Jesus stuff, and that Jesus stuff is dangerous. What have you done? What in your life has created that resistance? And I would argue it doesn't happen. But I want you to think about it as a Christian. Ask yourself, what have you done that has? You remember them braces? They be like, what would Jesus do? Remember them braces from back in the day? What would Jesus do? What have you done that Jesus would be like, I would do that?
Yeah.
I agree with that. I would do that. That sounds like something I would do.
Yeah.
So.
All right. We want to thank everyone who stayed up until this point. You know, this we said at the beginning this was going to be a video. Longer than our average, but that's because the weight of the topic we felt merited that much attention. So we look forward to seeing people who this message has reached acting decisively. When we say decisively, we mean in the now. In the now, and not like I got a 5 year, I got a plan in the future.
It's one of those.
So the time for planning has passed.
Think Sodom and Gomorrah type energy.
Yeah. So the time for planning has passed, and the time of action is now.
Ashe.
So until next time, Bibi Fahodie.
Asante.